welcome back to Chakra Care for the Creative Soul, a show where we're caring as much for ourselves as we care for the world while we're birthing our dreams into reality in this new earth that is here now. And today I'm so excited to have special guest Sonja Evans back again in the studio. And we're going to have a juicy, rich conversation about the solar eclipse energies coming up and how to practice multidimensional self-care and really take our self-care to an ascended level. And I want to just take a moment. If you haven't watched some of the other episodes with Sonja Evans, I encourage you and invite you to check them out. And if you're meeting her for the first time, I'm going to introduce you to her right now. Sonja Evans is a multidimensional seer who has been on the ascension path since 1999 and is actively serving as a healer and oracle all the way since 2013. And she uses her natural intuitive gifts, astrology, tarotstrology, and tapping into the quantum fields to support earth angels, starseeds, and lightworkers in releasing consciousness and light body distortions to embody more of their higher codes. Her healing niches include, but are not limited to, healing trauma fields, light body repair, childhood traumas, mapping and collapsing dark systems, and spiritual warfare, and healing gender splitting that manifests as relationship distortions. She also trains lightworkers to tap into their own spiritual genius and activate their mission codes, and her work can be found at Earth Angel Academy 144.org. Sonja, I'm so happy and honored that you're here again today. Welcome. And, you know, wow, these times that we're living in right now with so much rapidly shifting, we're sort of at the bookend moment coming up between the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse.
Yes.
And it's been a powerful window of time. And I just can't wait to hear, what you've been experiencing, what's been downloading through you about the times that we're in right now. And where I'd like to start is if you could sort of encapsulate in a word or two what you've been noticing both with yourself and the clients that you've been working with over this
Mhm.
past window of time. Like what's sort of standing out for you?
Well, it's one or two words on this in a Mercury retrograde. I'm kind of tread carefully here. um, so there is quite a bit going on, and I have found that since the equinox portal a couple of weeks back. I mean, that was where we really started to tip into a sort of like a tipping point for us collectively moving into North Node energies. We're in, we have the South Node in Libra, we have the North Node in Aries. And so the Aries energy, it works on a spectrum everywhere from the inner child. But when you go into the inner child all the way up to how you take action, how your energy manifests out into the world, it's also those new beginnings. It's the beginning of the astrological cycle. It's new timelines, new heroes' journeys. And so when we go into the Aries energy, we go into that fiery energy, there's always some level of purification that comes up. And I'm finding that everybody that I've been connecting to, and even in my own life, there's been some level of going into one of those spaces on the spectrum of Aries to really purify, because those are the keys to really creating in these new energies that are coming in. I mean, we do have that new moon in Aries also when we have that solar eclipse in just a few days. And that is sort of sealing in these openings that many of us are going through, these transformational exits as we go through those, the exit off the karmic loop. They're just showing me an exit sign like the kind you'd see in a movie theater or in a school building. It's like we're approaching the exit for many of us coming out of these karmic energies, because that South Node in Libra is where those karmic energies are as well. So we're having this opportunity to reinvent ourselves. The key word for Aries being I am. And so we're in this space of, or moving into this increasing freedom where we can sort of move into these new heroes' journeys, and redefine who I am, who you are, who we is.
And it's, one of the things that's coming through is a lot of us learn through contrast, right? And I don't know if
Yeah.
you've been noticing this, but for me, I've been in my own experience over the past several weeks, things have been showing themselves up to me as like contrasts, stark contrasts.
They're like
it's,
feedback loops or mirror energies. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I like how you just expressed that,
Yeah.
because and with the discernment too, along with it, that this feels like old energy. Like this feels, like when you're cleaning out your closet and you're like, I've worn this many times. There's a lot of memories attached to it, but it's a little tight, a little uncomfortable, a little faded. It's time to release it and move on and invite some new space in for something even better. And at the same time, I've been feeling a sense of inkling that there is more. It's percolating. It's wanting to come through. And there are moments, very decisive moments, where I feel I'm really in that new energy. And then there's other moments where, like you said, the feedback loop, it comes back up and it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
and at the same time, I want to say and rather than but, and with like an awareness that I have these almost like this fork in the road, like these two paths. And do I want to wash, rinse, repeat the same old cycle, or do I want to like step on to the new timeline?
Right, right. I love how you said that because even going back to the equinox when I was mapping things out in the fields for some of my groups, one thing that Spirit was showing me is that with this energy, with the soul between the solar transiting through Aries, especially the first decan, that 0 to 10 degrees, we were traversing around the equinox this Two of Wands energy, which is that need to make a decision, which brings in that energy of crossroads, choice points. And so many of the choice points have been really focused around, some of these old energies, those karmic energies, those conditioned ways of perceiving, and those consciousness traps that kind of hold them together. And this higher timeline set that of course challenges us, moves us, it causes us to go back within and kind of kind of rescript things and reflect. We're going through that Mercury retrograde. But I am, I like the way that you said that it was, the feedback loop, because I really do feel like that's that Libra energy trying to find
Mhm.
balance by showing you that mirror of whatever it is that you're not owning, whether it's shadow energy or some unhealed, whatever it is, so that we can really start to harmonize there. And I'm wondering, I know one of the biggest places I've been experiencing this, and I guess maybe we all experience it this strongly anyway, also is in our relationships, because that's Libra energy as well. So I'm finding that there's a lot of purification that's coming in, not just through these relationships, whether they're karmic ties or whatever, but even related relationship styles that are based on you know, conditioned habits or childhood defense mechanisms, or those residuals that we've been working on, and like, oh, I thought this was over. I thought I cleared this, but it's almost like we I think we do. It's just, sometimes it's almost like having a pop quiz at school, right? Everybody passed the test, but the teacher might throw it out there again and see if you still remember it, kind of thing. That's what I like to think.
Yeah, it's like a bonus question, right?
Exactly.
One extra marks, brownie points.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was interesting as I was listening to you share that. What was coming through too, and what I was noticing is, and the question I have for you also is like, so caring in that moment when you have that experience, that feedback loop, which you
Mhm.
unpack so beautifully, talking about the Libra energy. And I know even before we got on the call officially, just talking about that Aries energy wanting to go forward, right? And
Mhm.
sort of it makes me, when I feel into that Aries energy, it's almost like an exuberant child, a
It
spirited
is.
child, just like,
Yeah.
yes, like, go for it, which is wonderful momentum energy. And at the same time, the Libra energy sort of has that sense of the divine parent of sort of saying, well, wait a second, if you
Mhm.
leap over here, just kind of tempering it a little bit, not holding it back. And at the same time, when those moments of contrast come up, instead of it being tempered, it could be a holdback. It could be a pullback into, if we don't recognize one thing. And that's what I feel guided to ask you. And I hope it's not too pointed a question, but
No, no, no.
I know you feel me. Like, where do you think, you know, that moment of self-care comes in when you're experiencing that contrast?
Mhm.
And there's like that moment where it's like you could instead of being tempered in balanced, rebalanced in your choice point or the choices you make from that moment versus being pulled back into the feedback loop and, creating that spin cycle again.
Mhm.
If that,
Well, I think it all depends because, what we're all working out is so individual and we're in so many places in our path. But I will share a little bit about how this is kind of manifesting for me because this is how we're also healing in out of the Libra South Node with those karmic relationship patterns, distortions, etc. So for me, one of the things that have been showing up in a feedback loop for me has been um, just how I have been inner parenting myself from a place of, that hypercritical energy that we get conditioned into. So when I was not relating to somebody in a way that I felt was, to just use an example where I, you know, was feeling vulnerable, where there were still those spaces where it wasn't feeling safe to do so, I was realizing how I was just kind of hiding myself and holding back and shutting down. And so as I recognized that and as I went in to heal that, it creates self-care, I think, in that it creates that shift that sort of trickles outward into your outer circumstances where you're purifying to love yourself more. And whether that is showing up as you being able to say yes to yourself in ways where you were saying no, or whether it means taking care of the actual physical vessel because you were in some unworthiness state and not doing so, neglecting self, which a lot of us do when we grow up in these sort of weird toxic situations. We can neglect aspects of ourselves. When that starts to come back online, it shifts how we navigate our lives, and it also creates shifts in the relationships as well because I had gone through a lot of betrayals, especially in female circles. So when going into these spaces, I was realizing how much I was still putting guards up and how it was just coming back to me in different ways in those mirrors that helped me to really go in and start to heal that and start to say yes to yourself, because I really do feel that for many of us, and this is what that I am Aries energy is, it is saying yes to the self. It is putting yourself first. And, for many of us coming out of these different codependent patterns and relationship styles, it's doing that for the very first time for a lot of us, and seeing the results and how that happens in all areas of our lives, things starting to shift.
oh yeah, that's powerful because I feel like that's something that someone out there that's listening right now really needs to hear. Because
Mhm.
a lot of, when we think of self-care in a more conventional sense, it's about what are you going to do to take care of yourself, but more
Yeah.
in the outer sense, like I'm going to, do something to take the pressure off. And these are all great things to do. Go for a mani-pedi. I love doing that myself. But it's like, but there's the piece that's missing is that inner connection, right? And sometimes it's more of a distraction. It doesn't have to be, but
Yeah.
it can be
Yeah.
relaxing, and there's nothing wrong with it per se. It's just what
Mhm.
you're speaking to here that I hear you saying is that deeper, opportunity to trust ourselves more, love ourselves more, go into those places and spaces inside of us, like you so beautifully said, where we have been saying no to ourselves and say yes to ourselves. And it's you recognize so beautifully, like in the example that you just shared, that moment where you could have repeated that spin cycle of being critical with yourself as had
Mhm.
been, passed on from early childhood experiences. And instead you pattern interrupted that, you noticed that, and you saw it also as an invitation to love yourself more, which is
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
beautiful, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's a powerful message, right? This is the self-care that you're here sharing today and speaking to. And it's interesting because recently I was sort of smiling as you were talking about the whole back because having just I love how we talk because it's so, intuitive, and we just trust our flow with each other. Because what was pinging also as I was listening is that's sort of the Libra area, Libra energy that we were just speaking to, and then Aries is that exuberant. And I had a moment recently too where I I guess, yeah, I had a little bit of both because I had to hold myself back. I almost sent, and this was in a relationship, I almost sent a text message from a wounded place,
Mhm.
going back into a place of fear
Mhm.
around just, I guess it was about being abandoned, about or rejected something like that.
Mhm.
And what pattern interrupted me was saying to myself, like, what's going on here? Like, where's this coming from?
Mhm.
Who's really speaking? Is this, you know, me on this point in time, or is this like, how old are you? And
Mhm.
and then the interesting thing was, as I had been kind of in a defensive way, kind of compiling all the different things I was going to say, there was this inner awareness of noticing myself, noticing that. And I was like, are you sure you want to go there? Are you really sure? And then
Mhm.
what ended up happening was I boiled down my novella of a message that I was going to send into what's going on to the other
Mhm.
person, just to say, because that's the mirror, right? Like I had asked
Yeah.
myself too, what's going on, instead of getting pulled into the mosh pit with all those turbulent feelings that got triggered from that wounded place. And I was able to check in and say,
Was it
what,
one of those places where you were just kind of like maybe just gushing out, like emotional kind of gushing stuff? Yeah, yeah, I know what
yeah,
you mean. Yeah,
or
yeah,
emotional
yeah, yeah.
vomiting, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to be nice.
Yeah,
Not so
I
gross.
know. So, and then basically, I appreciate that. And then from there, it was like, I'm just, as I'm sharing it with you right now and with everyone who's listening, I actually am having that aha moment in this moment in your presence, right? That was the soul mirror, right? I was able then to shift how I showed up for the other person by in messaging and just say what's going on. Because I was able to say what's going on with me,
Mhm.
as opposed to getting pulled into the content of, you know, the thoughts and emotions that got churned up, right? It was
Mhm.
more
Mhm.
about, so interesting. With this solar eclipse coming up on Monday, I don't know. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this. I've been noticing that there's been like, even at work today, a lot of fear energy coming up and a lot of energy around, do we wear the glasses? Do we not wear the glasses? Can we drive? You know, because I know where I'm a high school teacher, they've given the students a PA day, and
Mhm.
and then the staff were expected to come in and do professional development, which
Mhm.
some teachers are, I don't know what, like, so there's all this kind of commotion going on. And then I know in Niagara Falls, Ontario, where it's supposed to be one of the places where people are going to be able to have a really clear view,
Yes.
there is this like kind of, I want to use the word frenzy going on, where people are booking hotel rooms and people are then sort of sub booking those hotel rooms somehow to someone else and generating all kinds of income from it. So there's this, it feels like really intense, frenzied energy. And even as I'm saying it, I kind of need to just like ground as I'm saying it.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what's your take on all of that? What's going on there? What's coming up for
Well,
healing? Or
um, just kind of mapping things multidimensionally, and these are just kind of based on some downloads that were really coming in for me when I was tuning into this energy. And I love how earlier you had said something about bookends, because it really is the bookend. The last solar eclipse that we had of this magnitude in the United States was back in 2017. So we're talking about a 7-year cycle. Now, interestingly enough, I have found that when I look back to where I was at 2017 and just, you know, the lives of so many that I've connected to, who I've had this conversation with. For so many of us, 2017 was when a lot of us started to awaken. A lot of us were going through the weird twin flame thingy, whatever it was. A lot of us were going through that, and there was a lot of awakening happening. And so this is sort of culminating now with this is a new moon, so we're having this on the same day as the new moon, where we're really printing this new beginning that comes in with the North lunar node in Aries, just really anchoring in that new hero's journey. And interestingly enough, with Mercury retrograde as well, this is where we are kind of getting a course correct. Mercury retrograde is going back into the first I'm sorry, the second decan of Aries, which is Three of Wands energy. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the tarot and the minor arcana, the Three of Wands is an energy that sort of talks about an expansion. You're waiting for your ships to come in to take you into an expanded state or into new territory. It's very Jupertian, I guess, if that's even a word, in its emanation, right? So it talks about those energies. So what I am really feeling happening in the field here is that with the eclipse, and when you think about what an eclipse is too, it is an eclipsing of certain energies that are no longer serving us, whether these are internalized through, different beliefs that we may have had. Perhaps we have created aspects of our reality when we were still operating from a false self construct, where this is being eclipsed out of our lives to allow that purification to happen, where we can move into vibrational alignment with a higher timeline set. And this is happening on many levels, but especially with that Mercury retrograde going in. And we were talking about, just really needing to clear those beliefs that come in from those places, because anytime we're talking about mercurial energy, it is the mental body. So we're talking about our thoughts and beliefs. So there's a purification that's creating a course correct that is shifting and creating spaces where we can start either eclipsing out of our consciousness, out of our timelines in a very powerful way, those things that tether us to the old storyline, so that we can start moving back into that new beginning with that new perspective. So it's a very powerful window to really anchor in the universal 8 energies that 2024 brings in, which connects us to our star energy, where we can move into being that star of our own story, instead of, a bit player and a co-player, whatever they call it, when you don't have a big role, and start structuring our lives that way. So we're receiving this really strong celestial pull to up level into these higher frequency bands by dropping off or eclipsing out the vibrational or frequency or energy dead weight. And that's why things are so intense. I mean, not only are we purifying with a lot of the ascension energies, but we're having these powerful feedback loops. I mean, for me, I've been revisiting things that I thought like 15 years ago, this was a wrap. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
just circling back. So we're really going through an initiation where spirit is looking to see if we got it, not just so that, the divine knows that we've got this. It's just we need to know that, and that builds our confidence. It is also too where we're moving out of, or eclipsing out of our fields, a lot of these tethers into these fear-based beliefs and energies and consciousness fields. Because one thing about Aries is it's often associated with the god of war. And, when I think about war, you think about a soldier. A soldier has to be brave. A soldier has to be courageous. A soldier has to maybe not so much not feel fear, because I think in spiritual circles we talk a lot about eliminating fear. It's not about that, I don't think. I think it's about feeling the fear and being courageous enough to do it anyway. And for many of us, this is where that expansion, moving out of that comfort zone through that Three of Wands energy, is going to place us in those new timelines. So it's a very powerful space to start moving into balance. For many of us, this means moving more into that masculine energy, that higher masculine energy, because that is very Mars as well, to kind of create a balance where that creation code comes online. Most light workers I know and people on this path, Polly, are fine with their feminine. There's no problem there. You're loving, you're accepting, you're caring, you're nurturing. But a lot of us really need to build up in that other energy so we can have balance. And this is also what those lunar nodes are doing too. There's just so many places you can go with it.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you shared that. I mean, so many things were pinging for me, and just as you shared that right now, I feel like maybe this just came through really loud and clear for me. That, like you said, this big up level, this big rebalancing right now with stepping into that divine masculine energy, because we've known for a long time that the reemergence of the divine sacred feminine was going to take the lead, and she's here, she's anchored here now. Now it's to complete the sacred union within, the unity consciousness is to, from that place, that awareness of sacred divine feminine, call in within ourselves that sacred divine masculine counterpart to create that balance. And you said something too about, I love that term, tethering, with the mental body. And it's interesting because our thoughts, when we're still subscribing to old patterns and beliefs that are maybe, even as women, toxic masculine, and that kind of about having to work hard, hustle, press on, soldier on, even is coming through right now. That is very much an energy that um, wants wants to be not only be rebalanced, but that's also that like mental energy that can like you were saying, tether us to the physical. Like the mental and the physical go hand in hand.
Mhm.
Whereas you were talking about the sacred, divine, feminine, the emotional and the spiritual kind of go hand in hand, and you need all of that together. And
Mhm.
so it's sort of the difference between the sort of balancing that sacral chakra and that solar plexus chakra, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
having that sort of that flow and that harmony between the two of them anchored in the real anchor, like the full on down, like dropping down through the solar, like through a balanced solar plexus, through a balanced sacral center into a rooted root chakra,
yes.
so that the chalice can open and have a stable base, right? Like not be wobbly or, fall
Yeah.
over.
That's powerful that you said that, because one piece astrologically that I did leave out was Mercury retrograde began its retrograde station in the third decan of Aries, which is Four of Wands energy. So that talks about creating stability, foundations. You have the four legs of a table. It's strong, it's stable. It talks about, things that are stabilized in the spiritual plane before they actually materialize in the physical, and then everything switches into Taurus, and then you start anchoring it down into the earth.
I love
So
that. That is powerful.
yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and it definitely is that. It is about everything you said about creating that stability and that anchor through the root chakra. I mean, it just perfectly just meshes in with what's going on astrologically, celestially right now, as we're getting that opportunity to create those new foundations through clearing through those channels. Yeah, absolutely.
So as I'm hearing you speak, that's the full circle. So where people could get tripped up, that's what I wanted to ask you right now with the solar eclipse on Monday. Like this is such an important day for our choice, our conscious awareness, our choice on Monday. So where people could get tripped up on well, anytime, but it's going to be amplified on Monday is if that root chakra is fight or flight, if that those feedback loops are being taken at face value and we're getting, held back by them and maybe discouraged, or you know the fear is just being amplified instead of the love, like you were talking about earlier, the love and respect for self,
Mhm.
the tenderness, all that sort of stuff, you know that's where are there other places too where you can see, like, in terms of just like how people can care for themselves in navigating these energies? I mean, we've been touching on a lot of them, but just to kind of pull them out and make them really, crystal clear for people, because once when you're outside of that fear loop, even just for a little bit, it's easier to see clearly. But once I'm just thinking of anyone who's listening to this right now who's just going, oh, OMG, like,
Mhm.
how do I feel better? How do I, how do I like get to this beautiful place that Sonja's talking about?
Mhm. Right. Yeah, that's an excellent question. And again, it goes back to everybody kind of being at different places in their timeline at this time. And, I think it really is about commitment to your inner process and willing to be honest with yourself about what is coming up, and even setting your intention. I think you can start wherever you are, just setting your intention, God, source, higher self, whatever, you align with, just setting the intention to utilize this energy to align with your highest purification and timeline that's available for you, and setting that intention and using that, even making an affirmation. I can't emphasize enough that anytime we're in a Mercury retrograde, it's actually a very powerful time to utilize affirmations, because Mercury is communications. It's not just the mental body. So our spoken word, printing our fields with the spoken word, becomes more amplified in recoding consciousness, recoding, our light body. So I think that those are practical ways that you can really start harnessing the energy and just trust what starts to come up for you. You know, I certainly don't want to give the impression that, after the eclipse, we're all just going to be in some great, like this morphed reality. I do believe that one day it will work that way when we're really operating from that 5D and above, consciousness. We're really in that space. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen like that here. But I do feel that, that this is setting in motion a rapid fire shift. And I can say with certainty that for some, it is going to be quite, not instantaneous, but sudden. I do feel that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be switching locations. I do feel that a lot of unions are going to be coming online because, again, you're saying yes to yourself, yes to being loved, yes to receiving. This is what that healing is. And this is, for many of us, is where we're balancing out, is just that inability to receive. And then we collapse in our relationships into overgiving, but not being able to receive love. So we attract people who are just taking, taking, taking. That all balancing out. And as that does, it shifts our timeline to be able to hold, these higher timeline sets where there's reciprocation or there's whatever it is, more abundance or whatever. So this plays out in many different ways, but I think the most important thing, for those of you who may be listening to this and saying, well, I'm not seeing that in my life. What are you talking about, Sonja? Is even starting with setting the intention and really meaning that from the bottom of your heart, setting that intention to align with the highest healing and receiving of your highest timelines, your true divine self-worth timelines, reflecting back to you whatever this eclipse can pull out or eclipse out of your life, out of your consciousness. Just be open and receiving it and trust what happens. I do feel in this year with the star energy, especially because the lessons that we've had since 2017 have been really intense for many of us. I mean, 2017 is a little bit after when I started my twin flame ministry. I think it was 2015 or 16 or so when I started that. But so many people, those situations for them fell apart, very disappointed and devastated many women and men. And, so now we're circling back to the space where the true union template is really anchoring in the earth grids, and this person is actually coming. So with the star energy, when we think about that card in the major arcana, it means many things. It's that spectrum energy again, but it does mean faith. And for many of us, a renewal of that faith, that place where, that we were wishing upon that star and it got dashed and we lost our way, that coming back into view for us as a prelude to us moving into our highest joy, because that's our birthright. And as we further along on the ascension path, we are distilling back into receiving what is rightfully ours. It's not just about being in the fields and doing all this light work, although that's a huge component of it, but it is about us laying hold of our ability to co-create with spirit those places that are bring us into that space of joy and really flowing from our true center, our true soul energy, and expressing that without all this other stuff, covering it or obscuring it or, just, interfering with that process.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. And I love that. Yeah, it's just getting all that noise and that static on the line so you can get
Yeah.
that clear connection to the divine, to that guidance. And it's just like what I was hearing as you were speaking is looking for the good, right? Looking for the good.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy when those feedback loops come up to start getting you sort of fixated or concerned or worried or all that stuff about what's being shown to us. And I know something that's been in my own journey so liberating is recognizing that when something's coming up for healing, when it's like, oh my gosh, like you said, I thought this, dealt with it, I cleared this, I'd heal this, and why is it popping back up again? And it's just what's been so liberating for me is real. I still have to remind myself about it sometimes because it's like we're all human. When those moments come up, and lately they've been coming up very strongly for a lot of people, even in dreams and things like that too. It's being I've had a lot of very vivid dreams where it's like I can tell I'm working stuff out. It's just recognizing it's just coming up for healing. You don't have to re-engage with it. You just bless it, thank it, and release it. You recognize it for what it is and not what it is not. And then focus on, like you were sharing, setting those intentions, which helps us to shift out of the glass being half empty, and I don't want to be overly, pat about this, to the
Mhm.
glass half full, because it really is about looking for the good. And that practice, you taught me that practice. I have to give you a shout out about the, um, just setting the intention to be on the highest possible timeline. Ever since I was in a car accident, I just want to take this down to like, ascended self-care 101 here for a second, because ever since last Valentine's Day, I was in that car accident where my car was rear-ended by a distracted driver, and I was pushed into another car into an intersection. That practice that you taught me has made an enormous difference in my life. And I used it on my drive home from work today, where I set the intention to revoke any, you know, manipulated or contrived, consent to any inorganic timelines. And I command my light to be on the highest possible timeline. And by golly, I've had cars that were tailgating me move into the next lane. It's like, but with complete faith and trust, just because that's
Yeah,
command. And that's the other piece you were talking about, just to pull that out and really re-emphasize it for people. You've been sharing so much rich wisdom of everything that's been pouring through you to share with all of us. And it's that piece there about that faith and that trust is essential in the
it is.
moment when you're noticing what you're noticing. And that is like, you can't have any like hesitancy in there. You can't have any doubt. You have to be like, if you're going to declare it, you're going to declare it, and you're going to, notice the other stuff and then choose that, you know.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. And it really is about us commanding our space. Or, I'm finding that, as at least at this point on the ascension timeline, so many of us, I mean, all of the ascension symptoms, I mean, our DNA is being upgraded. We're going through these massive upgrades. So we're able to hold more of our avatar self within our light body, which for many of us is helping us to activate and recognize that we have the ability to command our space, to command energy, to call our energy back, to even in many cases speak things into being. And that's why I love that there's just, even the resurrection portal or Easter from last week is just this a dispensation that comes in from Yeshua every year around the equinox that helps us to really activate into the Christ consciousness in deeper ways as we go through and as we progress on this timeline. And you know um I really do feel that it is, finding our power. And I mean, some of us are balancing out through the lunar nodes in that way. We're disempowered and finding our power. So this is playing out in so many different ways and so many different spectrums, even within our own lives, because, I'm finding that ever since the nodal change back in last year, that we're all having some shade of really going through these purifications and balancing some aspect of our light body or our consciousness that was just kind of teeter-tottering or in some state of imbalance. And as we do, you always hear me say that the Hyros Gamos code, or that masculine feminine in that merge, is the creation code. And so as we really balance in those ways, we're able to really activate this new timeline energy that's available to all of us. And even if, a lot of this is going over your head and you're not even in that space right now because you have stuff going on, know that, we're you're still aligned with the highest timeline that's available for you within that container. And it's just a healing that we all have to say yes to, that the divine is pouring out as part of this shift into these new earth timelines. But those who are gathering here in this space, listening to you, listening to me, we're commissioned to kind of be the forerunners, or the ground crew, as I like to call it, within this timeline. So we're definitely feeling it.
And I'm so happy that you mentioned that too, because sometimes when we're expanding, and we're open and we're curious and we're maybe watching something like this, I'm sure a lot of people are tracking with us, and at the same time there may be someone watching who is like, oh, where is this all going? There's
Mhm.
the mental body wants to understand it, and what I hear you saying, and I just want to reemphasize this again as another ascended self-care point, is you don't that just if you that's a trip switch, right? Like if you are noticing yourself saying, I don't understand,
Mhm.
love that part of you, smile at that part of you, and just intend that, like you said, you're on the highest possible timeline. You don't need to understand what that really means.
Mhm.
All you need to you don't even need, understand isn't the word I want to use, but you just need to choose that choice of knowing that,
Mhm.
and let the rest be revealed to you, right? In real time. Because the other thing is too, a lot of times, I know I did in the beginning, I think when I first started learning about timelines, that it sounded like it was in the future, right? And
Mhm.
yet, in every moment, there are so many possible timelines. And even when you were talking about the rebalancing, I've been having this felt sense lately, and it feels very almost tangible or visceral or something, that it's like, when you see waves on the ocean and it's kind of like fluid like this, or like a really hot day where you can see like the heat waves, and it's,
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm gonna take this choice, and then there's a little bit of this going on, and it's like it's almost like I could, if I go with this wave, I could go over here, and if I go with that wave, I could go over there, and in every moment there are these very subtle little waves or currents that our energy can follow with
Mhm. Mhm.
our attention. And so the timelines are like here right now, and
Mhm.
there are umpteen millions of trillions of choices, right? It's
Mhm.
just, and I feel like that Aries energy too is like, it's that, because I love, it's that youngster in us, that as you talked about, the avatar self, right? That's
Mhm.
just, and so having compassion for ourselves, recognizing that there's going to be that fluidity as things are balancing out, because as you shared earlier, like one moment we're feeling like, yes, I've got this is like clarity, and then that has come into balance, so something else over here has to rebalance itself again to restore equilibrium over here, and it's
Yes, yes.
kaleidoscope, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
So even at the point you made about encouraging people to consider 2017 with the last eclipse,
Mhm.
I can
Yeah,
share in my own life. I
think
was going
about
through
what,
major
yeah,
changes. Yeah.
think about what came online for you back in 2017. And I'm finding that the intensity of purification that we've been going through, especially the last couple of years, all started to come in around then. I know a lot of people that followed me were starting to awaken around that time. Certainly, many of them going through this weird twin flame thing with this person and not really understanding what was going on. That's when a lot of that really exploded. And I think it was showing a trend in the fields as far as, regardless of what you really believe that person to be, for the most part, and this is true of any relationships, but I found that it's really true for a lot of us that were going through that within that window, is that this other person was really coming in to show really how much the energy was imbalanced. And I think we talked about this on our earlier call, where what I was seeing in my work was that a lot of the women that were coming to me were very lopsided in the feminine energy as far as loving, accepting, just really going into these spaces of, even not seeing the worth within your feminine energy. So allowing any old thing, any kind of behavior, any kind of ghosting or sleeping around or whatever. And they really needed to move more into the balance of the masculine, where they could assert what they needed so that they could protect that vulnerable feminine and that divine child energy, that was completely offline, whereas the other person was kind of maybe not online in the feminine energy as far as feeling, connecting to how they really felt or dealing with their feelings in the masculine was a lot of what was going on. And so these powerful connections were coming in to offer opportunities for healing, for activating that process that's bringing us in where we are now. And as a result, a lot of people, again, regardless of whether that was the true twin or not, we're not going to argue that, but we are talking about being able to, for many of us who have these mission codes, to come in to really start magnetizing that person from a place of that balance coming online within the self. And this is also too where a lot of us are being initiated into fear. And I just feel guided to go into this for some reason, because this is a lot of union and mission codes in this year. I have someone who I was mentoring, and she was really used to a certain archetypal energy, that really inverted masculine, just very disrespectful to the feminine, narcissistic energy, this kind of thing. And she spent a season just working on herself, and then quite out of the blue, she manifested this new energy with this very high, what I call the high masculine archetype. And she said she still struggles with just waiting for something to fall apart, or waiting for him to find out that she's still, in this space, and thinking she's crazy, and then leaving her, whatever. None of this has happened. He's staying with her, good, bad, and ugly. It's that unconditional love. It's like a very powerful silver masculine energy. And she kind of had to be broken down through these other experiences to heal and open up and expand into this. And it's so funny. This is one of her fears, is that, it's too good to be true. And every time I talk to her, it's just getting stronger and more amazing for her, and really being able to receive that. So, again, this all goes back to, healing in those spaces of receptivity, healing through our feminine, opening up and taking inspired action. And this is the frustrating thing too, at least for me, is so far with the Mercury retrograde in Aries, is that I'm finding that I'm taking action, but then I have to kind of go back and say, wait a minute, now maybe I need to go this way. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
So
beautiful. I love that you shared that, because I feel like that's so relatable for so many people out there, because it's and I kept wondering too, as you were sharing that, as we open to ourselves, as we have that vulnerability with ourselves, because there's that level of the story, right? Where if we're going through patterns like your client was going through, where um we're having negative and hurtful experiences in relationship, and we're telling ourselves, we're so focused on the story, but then when we can take our awareness, like use the story as a jumping off point to like revisit what's really going on in ourselves, use it as like like you were saying before, a feedback loop, and
mm-hmm,
then tend to those thoughts that are call for more love, right?
mm-hmm,
And then, you know even though some of that stuff is still coming up for her now, she is in a different place energetically, magnetically speaking, within herself. So that vulnerability that's still there, over time, being able to be in a nurturing, with a high masculine partner who welcomes that as she's welcomed it with herself. That process is continues to be healing
mm-hmm,
for both parties, right? And so this is where I feel like there's this place of, I'm hearing the word limbo, when people are crossing the bridge from, they've said yes, they've taken, like you shared, the inspired action, and they have actually, they see the results of that inspired action and that inner work and that, ascended self-care, and new things are out picturing in their life, and it's wonderful, and they're happy, and then there's this layer of fear inside.
mm-hmm,
It's the beautiful thing is just to recognize that, keep moving forward, keep trusting, keep having faith. This is a process. It's not like you were talking about, we go forward and then sometimes it almost feels like we have to go back or change direction.
mm-hmm.
Just to really trust that process and to allow it to flow naturally, and to continue to do the work we were doing on our own, even when whether it's a relationship, and a romantic relationship, or a work relationship, or a family relationship, or even a relationship with our finances, right? Just
Right, right.
to keep trusting ourselves even more, that it's already gotten us to this place, and continuing to be vulnerable with ourselves, and tend to ourselves in that way, will
Mm-hmm.
only expand more possibilities. And
Yeah.
just to see it for what it really is, that's the point of recognition. I think that's the point of power, really.
It really is. It really is. And the interesting thing about this client, and even in my Patreon, I do a lot of well, not a lot, but I do some group readings sometimes. And one of the cards that I kept getting when I was doing readings for her was "Say yes to yourself."
Oh,
And one thing that Spirit was really dropping in my heart, especially if you want kind of like a fast track into the new beginning, the new hero's journey energy that's being offered to all of us, is one of the biggest key codes. And I mean, it's not this huge metaphysical truth, it's just say yes to yourself. And when I say yes to yourself, I mean, whatever, you know, inspires your heart, whatever fills you with joy, or as they say, you know, when something's in alignment with you, you feel joy, but you might feel a little bit of fear, but more excitement than joy. Whatever it is that has been laid on your heart, whether it's, you know, starting that business or taking that class or writing that book or whatever, you know, has been placed on your heart, or you know, even, you know, saying yes to yourself might mean saying no to things that, you know, are not aligned or drain your energy, or, you know, has an agenda or whatever. So you can say yes to yourself, but you can also say no to to what you know is not aligned, and that is saying by default yes to yourself. That is how you really get from wherever you are and into that new timeline. And for many of us, especially as we're going through this purification space, there has to be some level of healing from those fears, because many of us, we know exactly what we're supposed to be doing. We got the memo years ago, we've got mission downloads, we saw the visions, but then it turns into, well, if I leave this job, then how am I going to da da da? Or, you know, if I am vulnerable again, look what happened with the false twin flame, da 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 da. Or there's some kind of fear that's obscuring, and that's what this Mercury retrograde is doing. It's helping us to go back and re-script at the level of the mental body so that we can expand into past the comfort zone. That's that Three of Wands energy. And really, you know, comfort zone is, it can be gauged by where you feel, you know, it's comfortable, but I don't like it. But it also can be determined by what makes you uncomfortable. So I'm finding for a lot of people, there's a lot of discomfort with relationships, the way things are going, jobs. Those places of discomfort are that inner compass showing where the comfort zone has come to an end and where it's time to really take that leap. There's one thing about the Aries energy, especially as the North Node energy, which expands us, is it corresponds with the Fool card in the major arcana. That's the dude just jumping off the cliff like, well, I'm going to take this risk. I don't know if I'm going to die, but I'm going to do it. So that is what you were saying about faith, is sometimes not knowing, but, you know, not doing anything reckless or crazy, but just knowing that, you know, as especially for those of us, you know, starseeds, lightworkers, etc., knowing that as we take that risk, that the divine meets us halfway. And even if we do fall flat on our face, I'd like to think in many ways there's really no such thing as mistakes, only lessons. And as if we approach it in that way, we can see there's really, you can't lose. Really, there's no
Well,
losing there.
even if you fall on your face, you're that much further forward. You fall forward,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, you can pick yourself up and just, you know, find out, okay, well, maybe that wasn't the energy. Let me find what does work and let it be a path of discovery. You know, I've found that I've managed to expand as much as I have just by having that openness, like, you know, I don't know, I'm just gonna roll with it, and, you know, trial and error. I mean, that's kind of, you know, how I approach things. But I think we're conditioned to have absolutes, and if we can't see it, feel it, touch it, taste it, whatever, I'm not trying to go there. But really, I think we're moving into a time where we really need to leave that behind. And for many of us, that's what's being eclipsed, is the need to operate from that space. Because in these new earth energies, it is very much about trusting your intuition. I remember, I don't remember where it was, but I came across such a wonderful saying that was something to the effect that the earth is a school and we pay for it in tuition, if you
Oh,
get the play on
oh,
words.
I love that. That is great. Oh, I'm going to
I
remember
love
that.
it. You know, I wish I could remember where it was a long time ago. It just came from, I forgot where it came from. But that really is what it is. So these are all pointers too, that, you know, if anybody's watching this who's, you know, maybe struggling with the energy, struggling with some choice points or whatever, that will help you to navigate. But I think saying yes to yourself, you can't go wrong there at all.
What a marvelous place to like bring this like full circle and start to move into a close, because there's just, this is definitely going to be a show. I encourage anyone who's watching it right now to like save it and go back and watch it again, because there's, I find with this kind of sharing, there's, you watch it one time, you take so much in, and then you watch it another time and you get even more, and you can even fall asleep you know, listening to that's one of the ways sometimes you can bypass the mental body, right? Is just
Yeah, that's
say,
true. Hmm.
you know, and really and seriously, like I'm giggling about it, but it's I've noticed that myself too, because sometimes that mental body is a resistance,
It
and
is.
so I love that message. Just say yes to yourself. Say
Mhm.
yes. It's all for your growth. It's all for your good. And even when it's not exactly the way we thought or expected it to turn out, just say yes to that too, right?
Mhm.
Because in that, there's a seed of something greater that wants to blossom and wants to come forth and emerge, right? And so,
Yes.
just wow, what an incredible wow. Thank you so much today, Sonja, for all that you've been sharing. I always enjoy our conversations because
I do too.
so much sparks. Well, just a friendly reminder, everyone, that you can catch more of this wonderful wisdom and these divine downloads from Sonja Evans over at Earth Angel Academy 144.com. And you also have a YouTube channel now, too, if you want to share that as well, where this will be, I believe, too. So we'll be
Yes, YouTube channel is Earth Angel Oracle 144. That's where my deep woo-woo stuff is, so I just want to forewarn you. I go very deep on that channel, but I hope you will enjoy it and find something helpful there.
And you know what? I encourage you to say yes to yourself and go hop on over there and trust yourself just that much more, really and truly, because it's there. You can listen on a mental body level and try to figure it out and understand it all, and that has its place. And just be open and curious. I feel like that's something that, always has led me well in this lifetime. So Sonja, thank you again. And thank you everyone for being here and caring as much for yourself as you care for the world. Remember that you matter and your presence matters and you make a difference in this world. And we love you so very much. And with
Mhm.
that, I'll close, and until we meet again, lots of love and light. Be well, beautiful, creative soul.